No one in that courtroom expected the day to turn into a moment people would talk about for years. It began like any ordinary hearing, routine cases, quiet murmurs, and a crowd that barely paid attention to the next name being called. But within minutes, laughter would echo, pride would be shattered, and a truth would leave everyone in stunned silence. What looked like an ordinary woman standing alone would soon change the entire room forever. The woman stepped forward calmly, dressed simply, carrying a thin folder. She did not look nervous, but she also did not look like someone used to being in courtrooms of power. A few people in the gallery barely glanced at her. The judge leaned back in his chair, flipping through papers without much interest. When she began to speak, her voice was steady but soft, explaining why she was there to address a legal matter involving a misfiled case that had affected her work. The judge interrupted her mid-sentence, barely hiding a smirk. He asked questions in a tone that felt more mocking than curious. A few lawyers exchanged amused looks. Someone in the back even chuckled quietly. The judge made a remark about how people often overestimate their understanding of the law, and a ripple of laughter moved through the room. The woman paused, letting the silence settle again. She did not raise her voice. She did not react in anger. She simply waited. There was something about her composure that began to make a few people shift in their seats. But the judge continued, speaking as if the matter were beneath him, as if the woman standing before him were just another interruption in his day. Still, she stood there, patient, watching, listening, as if she knew something no one else in the room understood yet. The laughter in the courtroom slowly faded, but the tension remained. The woman finally spoke again, this time with a firmness that carried across the room. She asked the judge, very politely, if he would allow her to finish explaining her position before making further assumptions. The request was simple, but the way she said it carried quiet authority. The judge sighed but waved his hand dismissively, allowing her to continue. She opened her folder and began laying out precise legal references, citing precedents, case numbers, and procedural errors with remarkable clarity. At first, a few people thought she must have prepared well, perhaps coached by a good attorney. But as she continued, it became clear that this was more than preparation. She spoke with the confidence of someone who understood the law at its deepest level. The judge's expression began to change. His smirk faded, replaced by a faint frown. He leaned forward, listening more carefully now. The courtroom grew quieter with every sentence she spoke. Even the lawyers who had laughed earlier were now watching closely. Then she paused, closed her folder, and said something that made the entire room go still. She calmly explained that she was not there as a confused citizen or an unprepared petitioner. She was there because the case in question directly affected a judicial review she was overseeing. Then she stated her full name and her position. At first, the words did not register. Few people blinked, unsure they had heard correctly. The judge stared at her, his face draining of color as realization began to sink in. Whispering started in the gallery, spreading like a wave as people understood what had just been said. She was not just any legal professional. She was a justice of the highest court in the country, visiting quietly, without announcement, to review how lower courts were handling specific procedural matters. The silence that followed felt heavier than any noise. The judge sat frozen, his earlier confidence gone, replaced by visible shock. No one laughed now. No one moved. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air like a storm that had already struck. The woman did not show anger or triumph. She simply stood with the same calm expression she had carried from the beginning. She spoke again, not to embarrass anyone, but to make a point. She said that respect in a courtroom should never depend on appearance, clothing, or assumptions. Justice, she reminded them, begins with listening. The judge slowly stood up, his voice unsteady as he offered a sincere apology, not only to her but to the entire courtroom. It was a rare moment, seeing authority humbled in such an honest way. The people watching understood they were witnessing something deeper than a simple mistake. They were seeing a lesson unfold in real time. As the session ended, the woman gathered her folder and walked toward the exit. No one laughed now. Many people stood quietly, some out of respect, others out of reflection. The judge remained standing, watching her leave, the earlier arrogance replaced by a thoughtful silence, and long after the courtroom emptied, those who had been there kept thinking about that moment, not because of power or titles, but because of what it revealed about judgment, humility, and the quiet strength of someone who never needed to raise her voice to be heard.